At the main entrance of the museum, north entrance, there's a B29. This was one of the many planes that were used by the Japanese during the bombing of Pearl Harbor. This occurred on December 7, 1941. This event was a huge deal because it led the United States into joining World War II. This attack led 2,403 people to die and also 19 U.S. Navy ships to get destroyed, including the USS Arizona. Which, moving on to our next artifact, is a painting of the USS Arizona. This ship had 1,170 crew members, and sadly it got hit and had sunk. Sadly, on that day, over 900 crew members had died.
After this, the U.S. created the Lend-Lease Act, which enables people to lend supplies to any nation. The artifact that most closely represents this is the variety of helmets, weapons, and uniforms we chose for the display case. The Lend-Lease was starting to get popular, but then it ran into a strong opposition among isolation members of the Congress. The Lend-Lease program succeeds in realizing Franklin Roosevelt's vision. This leads to our next artifact, which is the DC-3. The DC-3 was important to the war as well as the Lend-Lease Act because it was used to carry soldiers and also cargo to other nations as a part of the Lend-Lease Act.
Now moving on to Richard Russell. Richard Russell made and maintained about 15 military bases and some research facilities. This led us to our next artifact of him. One big thing he created was the National School Lunch. He was also a founder and a president of the CEC.
Now moving on, Carl Vinson. He was one of the many few people who steered two bills through Congress. The first bill was called Expanding Naval Aviation to 10,000 planes and training 16,000 pilots. Also, it established 20 air bases. The second bill speeded naval construction and erased the labor restrictions in the shipbuilding industry, which leads to our next couple of artifacts. They are some of the planes that Carl Vinson expanded. The first one to your left is a Hawker Sea Fury FB Mk-11. This one of the more advanced planes that were built. The next plane is the Corsair. This plane was one of the first airplanes the U.S. made that could go faster than 400 miles per hour.
Now off to the next section, first-hand accounts of people who lived in Georgia during the war. A letter from Herbert Johns on March 18, 1944, reading, "Last night we had a party at the club. Seeing all the other fellas dancing and having a good time with their girls made me so darn lonesome and homesick for you that I just got up and left." Which leads us to our next artifact, is a painting of a boat. This boat was built in the Southern Eastern Shipbuilding Corporation, which secured a contract to build 36 Liberty ships. Later, the company hired more than 15,000 people and built a total of 88 ships. Fort Benton in Columbus employed 13,000 civilians at its peak. Rates of ownerships increased when the capita increased.
Georgia offered many social, political, and wartime efforts. Over 320,000 Georgians served in the Army during World War II. A lot of people found this time to get jobs in wartime industries. Georgia had many forts and military bases, which led us to our next artifact, a picture of Fort Benning in Columbus, Georgia. That's where they trained a bunch of people for the war. In 1942, a corporation made a contract to construct 36 Liberty ships for the Savannah River. Over the next 3 years, the company employed more than 15,000 people and built a total of 88 ships.
Leading to our next and last couple of artifacts, the main attraction of the museum, the B29 Bomber. There are only 3,970 of these made during the war. The people of Marietta contributed to the war effort by making B-29 bombers. Fort Benning was a military base where B-29 bombers were made. Also, they trained soldiers. The last place that B-29 bombers were made was in Brunswick, Savannah. Also, Georgia contributed 320,000 people to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces during the war, and thousands of others. They also let the nation train 2,000 combat pilots at the University of Georgia in Athens.
Thank you for visiting our museum, and before you head out, you can check out our gift shop and the food court. Thanks.